I've never been one to believe in the supernatural. Ghosts, demons, all that stuff. It was the kind of thing you'd hear in scary movies or around a campfire, but never something I thought I'd experience firsthand. That all changed one night in Las Vegas. It started like any other normal evening. I'd been working late and realized I didn't have much food at home, so I decided to stop by the grocery store before heading back. It was one of those 24-hour places, and even though it was already past midnight, I figured I'd grab some snacks and a drink, nothing fancy. The store was only a few blocks from my apartment, so I pulled into the lot, parked, and walked in. Inside, it was pretty quiet, just like I expected. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed faintly, and the aisles were empty, which was fine by me. I liked having the place to myself. I grabbed a basket and started wandering through the store, picking up the essentials: soda, chips, and some beef jerky. I wasn't planning to stay long. As I made my way down one of the aisles, something caught my attention. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw someone, just a glimpse of movement behind me. It wasn't uncommon to run into other late-night shoppers, but this felt different. I didn't think much of it at first and kept walking, but as I rounded the corner into the snack aisle, I felt it again, that presence following me. I turned my head slightly and caught sight of her. She was standing a few feet behind me, just barely visible under the dim lights. At first, I couldn't make out much, just that she was dressed in black from head to toe, with long, dark hair that hung messily over her face. Her skin was pale, almost sickly looking, and her eyes, well, that's where it got weird. She barely had any eyes at all, just sunken, dark hollows where they should have been. I tried to shrug it off, thinking maybe she was just some homeless woman or someone having a rough night. But something about her felt wrong, unnatural, like she didn't belong there. I sped up, tossing the jerky into my basket and moving to the next aisle, hoping she'd just go on her way. But as I turned the corner, I felt that presence again. Closer this time. I glanced over my shoulder, and sure enough, she was still following me, her movements slow and deliberate. I'm not the kind of guy who scares easily, but I'll admit this was starting to get to me. My heart was pounding a little faster now, and I tried to tell myself I was overreacting. She was probably just some weirdo, right? Harmless. Just mind your business, get your stuff, and get out. But then I made a mistake. I stopped. I don't know why I did it. Maybe curiosity, or maybe I just wanted to see if she'd walk past me. But she didn't. Instead, she walked up to me. I froze, my mind racing with all kinds of thoughts. She was right next to me now, close enough that I could smell this strange sour odor coming off her, like rotting fruit or something decaying. I could barely bring myself to look at her, but when I did, my stomach turned. Her face was even worse up close. Her skin looked like it was barely hanging onto her bones, and those hollow eye sockets, they seemed to stare right through me. I wanted to move, to run, to do something, but I couldn't. Then she spoke. "Do you know where your soul has been?" Her voice was low and raspy, almost like a whisper, but the words sent a shiver down my spine. What the hell was she talking about? Where my soul had been? Who says something like that? I couldn't even respond. I just stood there, staring at her, my mind screaming at me to move. She was too close now, her head tilted slightly as if she was waiting for an answer. But I didn't give her one. I did the only thing I could think of. I turned and ran. Well, I tried to anyway. In my panic, I whipped around too fast and crashed straight into a display shelf. Everything went flying: cans, boxes, my basket. I felt a sharp pain in my head, and then everything went black. I don't know how long I was out, but when I woke up, the store was completely different. For one, it was quiet, too quiet. The soft buzzing of the fluorescent lights was gone, replaced by this eerie silence. I sat up slowly, my head throbbing, and looked around. My first thought was that the store had closed while I was unconscious, but that didn't make sense. They never closed. It was 24/7. But it wasn't just the silence that was wrong. The lights had dimmed significantly, casting long shadows across the aisles, and the shelves that had once been stocked were now half empty, like the store had been abandoned. I got to my feet, still feeling groggy, and that's when I noticed something else. No one was around. No shoppers, no employees, just me, standing in the middle of an empty store. I looked down at my basket. It was still there, tipped over on the floor, the soda and chips scattered around me. But the woman, she was gone. I told myself it was a dream, or maybe I'd hit my head harder than I thought. But then I heard it, a sound, faint at first, but growing louder. Footsteps. They were slow, deliberate, echoing through the empty aisles. I whipped my head toward the sound, my heart racing. I couldn't see anyone, but I knew I wasn't alone. "Hello," I called out, my voice shaking more than I wanted to admit. No response, just more footsteps. I was starting to panic now. My mind raced with 1,000 thoughts, each one more terrifying than the last. Where was everyone? Why was the store so quiet? And who or what was walking toward me? Then, from around the corner, a face appeared. It wasn't the woman from before. It was the clerk, a guy I hadn't even noticed when I came in. He was tall, maybe in his 30s, with slicked back hair and a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. There was something off about him, something that made my skin crawl. "Closing time," he said, his voice low and almost mocking. I took a step back, trying to make sense of what he was saying. The store didn't close. I knew that. And yet, here I was in a dimly lit, empty grocery store with no one around but this creepy clerk who seemed to think it was time for me to leave. I need to pay for my stuff," I stammered, pointing to the scattered items at my feet. He didn't move, just stood there, that creepy smile plastered on his face. "Closing time," he repeated, his voice a little softer this time, like he was trying to coax me into leaving. Something about the way he said it sent a chill down my spine. I didn't argue. I didn't question it. I just grabbed my things, tossed them into the basket, and bolted for the door. As I ran, I half expected the woman in black to reappear, to grab me, or whisper something terrifying in my ear. But she didn't. The store remained empty, the only sound being my hurried footsteps as I rushed toward the exit. I slammed through the automatic doors and out into the parking lot. The cold night air hit my face, and for a moment I just stood there, catching my breath. My heart was pounding, my hands shaking, and my head still throbbed from where I'd hit it. I looked back at the store, expecting something, anything to happen, but nothing did. The lights inside flickered dimly the same way they always had. The parking lot was empty, just like it had been when I arrived. It was like nothing had happened. I threw my basket into the trunk of my car, not even caring that I hadn't paid for the stuff. All I wanted was to get as far away from that place as possible. As I sped out of the lot, my mind raced with questions. What had I just experienced? Had I imagined it all? Maybe I'd hit my head harder than I thought and hallucinated the whole thing. That would have been the logical explanation, right? But deep down, I knew better. I don't go back to that grocery store anymore. In fact, I try to avoid going out at night altogether. I know what I saw. I know what I felt. That woman, she wasn't human. And whatever happened in that store, I'll never be able to explain it. I still hear her voice sometimes, late at night when I'm trying to fall asleep. That raspy, whispered question that sent chills down my spine. "Do you know where your soul has been?"